Episode 5 of Everybuddies podcast, and we are now broadcasting our pirate code and hacking into the Matrix.
Oh, yeah.
Have you heard about this supernova?
I have heard about this supernova.
What's it called?
Oh, man. The star?
What's the supernova called?
SN 2024 GGI.
Right, and it went off when? Or when
22 million years ago.
22 million light years away in NGC 3621. NGC 3621 is in the constellation Hydra. It's in the southern hemisphere, and that's why this was observed by ESOs.
Very large telescope.
In Chile. It was first observed by Atlas, the
Asteroid.
Terrestrial Last Alert System. It's believed that Atlas first detected it an hour after the light became available. Took a full day for the very large telescopes to focus in. We got a whole boatload of data over about 80 days from this thing. If you go to the next slide, you can see the very large telescope. It's actually 4 telescopes, and they have lenses that are about 27 feet across.
Okay. 8 meters?
8 point something meters, yeah. It's believed that the star that produced this supernova was a red supergiant, somewhere between 12 and 15 solar masses.
Okay.
There's a couple different theories, a couple different competing hypotheses about how supernovas are created, how supernovae are created.
Before you get there, on this screen I see a dot circled
That's the star.
before it went supernova.
I think that's the star before it went supernova, but maybe it's after it went supernova. I mean, does it say on?
It seems to be similar size to
Yeah.
everything around it.
Yeah, so that is after it went supernova. It was mapped previously by Spitzer,
Okay.
by the Spitzer Space Telescope. So anyway, there's a couple different competing theories about how supernovae occur, how they evolve. The first one is the neutrino trapping theory. For a long time, it was thought you just have this huge amount of collapsing material, and if things get too dense, and it bounces off, right? But the problem you have,
That was the theory I was taught in high school.
and if you're talking about a star the size of a sun, that's basically what's happening, is you have all this iron collecting in the core over all these phases of growth and collapse that a red giant goes through. It eventually collapses, hits that iron core, and then bounces back off with this enormous amount of energy. What prevents that core from collapsing any further is electron degeneracy.
Okay.
So if you take Neal's model of the hydrogen atom, it's basically that you have a nucleus with an orbiting electron. The electrons are like particles that are in orbit around the nucleus. But now we know that's not actually how it works. Those electrons are not actually particles like that. They're more like waveforms, and they exist within probability clouds. But when you have enough pressure on them, the orbits of those electrons keep getting pushed down.
Okay.
A way you can think about it is the closer an electron gets pushed toward the core, the faster it has to move to keep from falling in.
Okay.
And even though we know that's not actually what's going on, if you assume the electron, if you treat it like it's a particle flying around the nucleus, then when it gets close enough that it has to go at the speed of light to keep from falling in, that is the highest amount of pressure it can hold before it will fall in.
So it acts like a wave until it's acted upon, and then it acts like a particle.
Right, before it turns back into a wave. I mean, you observe an electron, it becomes a particle.
Right.
You absorb it, right? And it becomes a particle. But just because you get it to convert to being a particle doesn't mean it won't absorb energy from something else and convert back to being a wave.
My question as it relates to what you're talking about is, would it not be in the state of being a particle as it's being crushed?
It wouldn't be, because it's not actually in contact with anything.
Okay.
Because you have all these electron orbitals, and these electrons are all negatively charged. So when you push on those outer orbitals, it's actually the charge from those electrons that's pushing down on the electrons below it. So they're never actually touching. It's charge against charge. It's just like I push my fingers together, but actually the atoms in my separate fingers are not touching. It's
And
charge against charge.
you hit it with the photon, it acts like a particle.
Mm-hmm.
Is it being hit by photons at this stage?
No.
Okay.
Eventually it gets crushed down enough that electrons are forced into the nucleus. At that point, those electrons merge with protons and become neutrons. In the process, they have to release some momentum. The spin on those electrons is gone, and it's released as neutrinos. You wind up with so many neutrinos getting trapped within this super dense material that they eventually force it all out at once. And that's actually how you get this core bounce. You get this incredible explosion of material, right? And then it propagates out through the envelope of gas that surrounds this core. An alternative model is that the iron core within
I've been switching the slides.
the iron core spins so fast at a rate of 1 revolution every 10 seconds or faster. You get this force that spins the gas that surrounds it, that envelope, spins it so fast that you get relativistic jets of matter that push out of the north and south poles. And that's enough to heat and force all this material apart. So with observing this supernova, you have an opportunity to get data that it's unprecedented, right?
Okay.
And hopefully learn a little bit more about how supernovae evolve. So if you take a look at this graph on the left, you can see it's at 1.1 days. And on the q-axis, you're looking at the polarization of light along north-south. And on the u-axis, you're looking at polarization along east-west.
Okay.
Orthogonal to it, right? And what you can see is that polarization on day one, it's pretty centralized. One
So-
isn't...
Also, pretty much inverted to what you see on day 81.
Right, yeah. You can also see that the different wavelengths of light from blue to red are kind of grouped pretty tightly, which indicates that envelope is tight. All the matter is still relatively close together.
Okay.
And then on day two, they're still clumped like that, but you have more polarization along the east-west axis. And then it slowly, over the next 8 days, 9 days, comes back to being a little bit more polarized along north-south, but otherwise it's pretty close in there, just like it was on day one. And if you go to the next slide, it shows how it moves from day 1.1 around to day 10. On the right side of that image are the different emission spectra for different elements. So helium, oxygen, things like that. And you can see how they shift along each day. That gives you an idea of what's getting dispersed through the cloud,
Okay.
through the envelope that surrounds it. And so we get an idea of what it would have originally looked like, what it would have looked like when it began to propagate. And on the left-hand side of that bottom image, you've got this perfectly spherical kind of explosion.
Example.
It's what you would expect to see if you were entirely dealing with neutrino bounce. And then you've got B and C, which are more of what you would expect if you had relativistic jets coming out of north and south. You have this very elliptical.
And that's what
Right.
we observed, right? Relativistic jets, or no?
Well, the most likely model is actually in D, where you have two ellipses kind of stacked on top of each other, like two olives stuck together with a toothpick. And what that indicates is that you have some of both going on. the data from it is showing that the reality is a little bit more complex than can be theorized.
Right.
Go back to the artist's rendition. What do you think of it?
That reflects option D well.
Right. That artist did a bomb job.
I always like artist renditions of spatial phenomenon.
He did a good job.
Ain't that a cool job?
It is. To make artist renditions.
Physical phenomena like that?
It would be a great job. Artists are underpaid, so.
They take advantage of the fact that he or she is passionate about it.
So do you want to do some comments?
Okay.
All right. So this first one, birth rate crisis, South Korea versus USA and Elon's hypocrisy. It's where I was just talking about how birth rates are going down all over the world. And people like Elon Musk say, oh, this is a big problem, right? I personally don't think it is. But then Elon Musk doesn't propose any policies that would actually help.
Right.
What Nolan 4339 says is, while public support programs for maternity care may help, it is likely community empowerment policy that is needed. Social culture at the local level needs to shift back from being so individual focused and learn to embrace community involvement where neighbors can support each other. What do you think?
I think that's actually one of the problems that I think about often.
Okay.
Is how a lot of people these days are isolated from each other in their local communities. And what a lot of people are doing are finding communities that think like them on the internet, which is kind of causing
Echo chambers.
ideological extremism.
Okay.
Right? And also it's getting people more emotional,
Distrustful of people outside that bubble.
and caustic with each other that have opposing ideas. And really, to benefit your community, you need to be able to have mature and not agreeable, but non-confrontational
Yeah. Like discussions.
discussions with the people around you.
Uh-huh.
Because rarely is it just one idea,
Mm-hmm.
right? Policies need to kind of be three-dimensional
Sure.
to truly serve the communities. And that requires ideas from everyone.
Yeah, that's true. At least need everybody's buy-in.
Right. The idea that communities need to have stronger ties to each other, individuals within these communities need to have stronger ties to each other, I 100% agree with Nolan.
Okay, cool. I agree too. So the Ray of Sunshine 8096 asks, does this include abortion rates? I really wasn't thinking about abortion when I was thinking about birth rates. But Free the Internet for Life says, no, abortion isn't included. It's also not documented as a cause of death or infant mortality. U.S. has anywhere from 600K to 1.2 abortions a year. 680K Americans died from heart disease and obesity in 2024 for reference.
And then he says a little bit more, but his comment got cut off.
Okay. All right. So I believe he went on to talk about how if abortion was illegal nationwide.
Except for medical.
Necessity.
He says a quarter of people who
Yeah.
would have an abortion will still get an abortion due to medical exemptions.
Going overseas.
Right.
Yeah. There's a good question as to whether or not, what would happen if you actually banned abortion everywhere? Would people just be more careful? Would you just have higher use of birth control?
I don't know that you would.
Abortion rates in the U.S. have actually fallen since it was first legalized, largely because people use birth control more, because you just have fewer pregnancies. I don't think there's any humane way to ban abortion.
Right.
Because you have to have a health exemption. Otherwise, you're telling people you can only have an abortion if your life is in danger, and we decide when your life is in danger.
Right.
The government decides when your life is in danger. The thing is, if you're going to have a health exemption, health applies to everything in your life, including your mental health, the things you want from life, your relationships.
For people who go through childbirth, their body is forever changed.
Yeah. In my opinion, it's not for the government to tell people.
At what point is the risk acceptable?
Right.
Right.
It's not the government's decision to make. It's the patient, it's the woman, it's the person who's carrying the child.
Right.
So then
Kokoda,
he says, Trump stopped the funding of school food programs, so you don't get to come on here, MAGA, and crow pro-life because you are not pro-life. I didn't take from this discussion that anybody was advocating a pro-life or pro-choice stance.
I don't really disagree with Kokoda.
Right. If you're going to say abortion needs to be illegal, then you need to support the care of children.
Right. Otherwise, you're just anti-women's choice.
Yeah. The reality is you could say, oh, it's parents' job to take care of their kids. Well, not everybody's going to be able to. You know, things happen to people. If you're going to say the government isn't going to support kids, isn't going to take care of kids, well, then the government's just going to pay even more money when you got to imprison those people.
Right.
There have been multiple studies that show that Head Start programs pay for themselves so many times over just because kids who go to Head Start are so much more likely to be employed and so much less likely to go to prison. So your option is invest in kids and their health or deal with crime. Deal with more crime and a weaker economy later down the line. To me, if you're going to say, well, I'm pro-life, then you have to be pro-investment in children.
Right.
All right. Glad we could agree. You ready for the next?
Yeah, I'm already on it.
Talking about the Arab Spring.
Yes. CM Baz, 1140 says, the most effective psyop the CIA ever managed to do made people destroy their own countries.
I don't think that could have happened if people weren't hungry. If people had all their basic needs met, I don't think any amount of propaganda would have changed it.
Right.
Although
in the U.S. right now, there are more guns than people.
True.
You could say people's rights have been infringed upon systemically.
Okay.
In recent years.
Sure.
How many people do you see taking to the streets with weapons? And
none.
Zero.
Right.
I think that's because people aren't going hungry yet.
Yeah, that's a good point. People aren't freezing.
Right.
The electricity hasn't shut off.
Their kids are still eating.
There was a city in St. Louis once where the lady who was challenging the incumbent mayor, she won hands down in this small town because...
Surrounding St. Louis.
Yeah, it was outside of St. Louis. She basically won because she was able to run on trash collection. Trash had not been regularly collected in over a year. The other guy, the mayor, was running on being pro-life and everything else. And she's like, I'm not here to talk about that. I just want to get the trash collected.
You know what, man?
She ran away with it.
Oftentimes with leadership, you just got to be a little bit more reasonable than the last person.
Dude. What is it? Maslow's hierarchy, right?
Right.
He actually stole from an indigenous tribe. Yeah, basic needs. I don't think the Arab Spring would have happened if people's basic needs were being met.
Right. This guy sort of looks like Gaddafi from Mitchell Henderson Q4H.
Yeah.
You do kind of look like Gaddafi. You chose a good comparison image, man.
Yeah, he was a monster, brutal guy.
He was a bastard, and it's, you know, how he died, that's up to you to decide if that was fair, but I'm glad he's dead.
He had great hair, though. I mean, so this is on a different one. This is on a different video where I talked about basically how, you know, the clothing you wear projects an image. I had a couple clips.
Right. He compared it to being a TV actor.
Yeah.
Or a TV character.
Right. And what Avocado Toast TV said, some people dress in suits, some people prefer colorful hippie clothes, whatever we choose. It's always a costume we are wearing to perform on the stage of life.
Sure. If you're taking life holistically, yeah. Yeah.
There's also the element of usefulness, practicality.
Right, because if you're in a hospital, you don't want dangly clothes.
Oh, yeah. It takes precedence over everything, right? Or wearing safety gear if you're working in an explosive environment or out on the street, traffic, then safety gear is your number one priority.
Right.
But yeah, he's right. Otherwise, we use our clothing to project an image. Our faces and our bodies are canvases. A lot of the idea we have now of what it is to look professional. And obviously, there are some things that are just glaringly unprofessional. Like if you're mostly nude, that's not professional.
I'm dressed up because I had an interview.
At a job interview. Our idea of what is professional and how a business person should look, that clean-cut look, actually comes from the post-World War II era. In World War II, you had the first truly industrial war, where everybody is supplied with the same things. The only way you can supply a military that big is if everybody's wearing the same clothes, and everybody has the same hygiene needs, and everybody eats the same diet. So everybody looked the same, and everybody talked the same.
Right.
And when these soldiers came back from World War II, they came back and they basically kind of kept that clean-cut appearance. That clean-cut appearance showed that you were a serious person.
Actually, an interesting factoid. Prior to World War II, navies relied on fishing
Oh, really?
to feed crew. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. At least on NAS Lemoore, inside the next to the food court, they had recipes that I believe from around the Civil War era.
No kidding.
That either Civil War or World War One. It was basically, here's basic recipes that you can go off of based on what you got. Catch local fish. Here's how you prepare it.
Way.
Yeah.
So they had all these recipes
yeah.
for different fish you'd catch in different parts of the world.
Well, specifically what I was looking at was their chowder recipe, and that was very open-ended.
Isn't the idea of chowder that it's just whatever you got?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
But it was basically a rule of thumb. Here's how you make a basic chowder.
I like that.
The recipes were much more open-ended back then than what they are now. Because you didn't have a standardized set of items that
Yeah,
you were
and
receiving.
you didn't have that supply.
Right.
Yeah, to achieve that level of supply, you have to have standardization.
Yeah, I mean, the primary thing they wanted to make sure they loaded enough of was citrus.
Yeah, yeah. So people wouldn't get scurvy.
Right.
If you look at pictures of soldiers and sailors prior to World War II, they weren't so clean cut. You look at World War I, you look at the Civil War, the people had mustaches and beards and everything else.
Right.
You look at uniforms, especially in the Civil War, they weren't all the perfect blue and gray. You know, a lot of them were whatever you had. You just hope you didn't get shot by your own people for not being in the right uniform. The British military, the Redcoats, had a much more standardized uniform than anybody else. But when I look at pictures of soldiers from prior to the World War II era, you just don't see that level of cookie cutterness.
Right.
So anyway, I think a lot of the cookie cutter corporate image, and when you talk about suburbs, cookie cutter houses that are just repeated again and again, I think a lot of that actually just stemmed from that GI aesthetic, that government issue aesthetic.
And part of the reason of no beards in the American military is because the misconception that you need a clean shaven face to put on a respirator.
Really?
Yep.
Huh.
And ostensibly that's been disproven multiple times. And anyone who would struggle to get a seal with a beard but not struggle to get a seal without one, it's entirely a skill issue.
Interesting.
Modern respirators do not need a perfect face.
To get a good seal.
And that everyone's skin is different, and those respirators are standardized.
Okay, sure.
Right? You got small, medium.
So you got to have a material that can conform,
Right.
that can fit to the person's face.
And I mean, especially with the military, it's got to be things that improve quality of life but don't have a practical effect. It takes very long, often decades, before those policies are changed.
Interesting.
Right?
Wow. Okay. Well, actually, I guess I'm not too surprised about that. There's a lot of inertia.
Right.
There's a lot of inertia.
Yeah.
And let's be straight up. The military has more policies than they have people to change them.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Look how long it would take just to have somebody even look at it.
Right. You're right. Some of the important things, though, they do lack on, you know? For instance, how recently sexual assault finally got added specifically as a UCMJ article.
Well, I mean, was it that kind of push from the White House?
I don't recall,
Okay.
but I know it was within the last 5 years that it got standardized.
Gotcha.
Because what it used to be, the way that you prosecuted it on the UCMJ side was Article 92, failure to comply with a lawful order,
Mm-hmm.
and then the regular assault charge.
It wasn't until recently that sexual assault was its own charge.
Yep.
Good Lord.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Right.
On that note, if
On
you
to
go
the
to the next slide, you can see Gaddafi, when he was offed, the New York Post headline was Gaddafi killed by 20-year-old Yankees fan. And on the picture on the left, the drainage tunnels where he and his...
Cronies were.
Yeah. And on the right is the 20-year-old Yankees fan. And
Holding Gaddafi's gun.
yes, Gaddafi's golden gun.
I hope they let him keep it. I doubt they did.
I bet you he sold that thing.
Hmm.
We'll look it up for the next
That's
episode.
his prerogative.
I would want to keep it as long as I could.
I also know that as Gaddafi died, someone shoved a machete up his butt. He may have already been dead before it happened, but they shoved a machete up his butt. So that bullet was a grace.
Yeah, on to the next comment. Joe Childs, 9448, says, you guys have a very skewed opinion about food stamps, where the money comes from, and how they get paid for it. And this is coming from somebody broke and poor who was on food stamps for many years, but got myself off of them.
The way I interpreted this comment was he might have been speaking about how I said food stamps get money out of billionaires to pay the little guy,
Right.
someone who's down on their luck.
Okay.
But I know it's not billionaires paying for it.
Right. Because
It's
they don't pay. Yeah. Billionaires don't pay shit.
Right.
It's wage earners, millionaires, multimillionaires have more in common with somebody handing out burgers at the drive-thru. They have more in common with them than they do with billionaires. The tax code is every bit as much against them. In fact, you could say it's even more against them. But once you get into that tens of millions, hundreds of millions, billions of dollars, the fuck you money,
That's when.
yeah, that's when you're not taxed. Like, your income is coming from compound interest, and you're not paying any taxes. People might imagine, oh, well, one day I'll get there. No, you probably won't. But just eliminating a few of the loopholes on that, so the people had to pay those taxes, you could basically drop those income taxes. And then you have billionaires who are just making money by not working.
Right. And the issue is they don't spend the money.
Would they spend it to buy more assets?
Right. It never re-enters recirculation with them.
Yeah, it inflates the cost of assets.
Right.
Anyway, congrats to you for getting yourself off of food stamps. I've been on food stamps. My attitude is if you qualify for it, take it. If you qualify for assistance, take that assistance. Take that money.
Why?
I do.
Because you're going to pay for it once you get off of it.
Right. Because when you're doing better, they're going to get their bite out of your ass.
Yeah.
So take it while you can.
Right. And they're going to take that bite whether you took the help or not.
Right. They're going to take that bite whether you took the benefits you qualified for or not.
Right.
So this next comment, we were talking about the cat skeleton that was buried with its owner. Fish in the percolator.
Excellent name.
Why is there the Da Vinci Resolve comic book frame in the background?
That's because it's just cut out from our final product.
Right.
Use Da Vinci Resolve.
Yeah. It's the cutout from the full episode.
Right.
And we use that comic book effect on the slides because it's cool. That's it. Yeah. I just like that effect more than the others.
Eli Smith W50s agree.
He was talking about in that video how in countries where there are lots of negative stereotypes about aging, like the US, people who believe those stereotypes tend to do worse as they age than people who live in countries where there are positive stereotypes about aging. For example, in China, Janet Yellen went to China, and there she's considered a scholar. She's super important. She goes to a restaurant and they want her to taste all the wines and the best dish. Everybody wants her opinion on it. She was like a superstar when she went to China. While here, people look down on her. I think she's amazing.
Right.
I think she's one of the most beautiful women on earth, and obviously one of the most intelligent. A lot of what people will say here is, oh, she's old. Oh, she's fat. Oh, she's ugly. And it's ridiculous.
Here's the thing. You're going to make it to that age regardless.
Right.
So you might as well be enjoying it.
Right.
Hey, that means for us, for the people around us, as they get older, just treat them well, man.
Right.
You don't got to go out of your way to...
The negative things you say about the elderly now, people are going to say about you.
Right.
Maggot 1077 says, my mother is turning gray and can't breathe from 3 decades of smoking. She says it's because she's old. She's 66. My husband's mother is 73 and can breathe just fine. It's really weird that people will convince themselves that they are just old when there are 80-year-olds that are still bodybuilders.
Right. And just the other day, we saw Mike. He
Neighbor
had just
Mike.
turned 80 years old, man.
It was his birthday.
Right.
Yeah.
And he was sharp as a tack. He was out there. His driveway is at a serious slant. He was moving up and down it just fine.
He was having no trouble walking up and down the driveway. Yeah.
Right.
Well, the thing is, smoking, like, it's the worst thing for your cardiovascular system. And any place where you have lots of small blood vessels, the fastest way to damage those areas is with smoking. So your brain, your dick, your heart, your lungs. You could say your whole body is eventually full of these small blood vessels.
Yeah. Capillaries everywhere.
Right. But you have a lot of redundant function in a lot of places. But in some places you don't. So the best thing you can do, like seriously, one of the best things you can do for your health is if you smoke,
Quit smoking.
get some help, talk to your healthcare provider, find the safest way to quit, and quit. I quit.
It's true.
You can quit.
I quit.
You quit. Right. So my next comment, I was talking about how in our society, most people get their ideas of what other people are from TV characters. A lot of people are just raised by the TV.
Right.
And a lot of the expectations people set about behaviors from others is based on what they themselves have seen on TV, right? Like, for example, a nerd. What is a nerd?
Right.
A nerd is a TV character. It's a movie trope. It's an archetype. There isn't really any such thing as a nerd, right? Maybe the person in front of you is pretty intellectual, or maybe they geek out on Star Wars or whatever, but they're a complete human being.
Mm-hmm.
While the character you see on TV, the nerd you see in the movies, is not a complete human being.
Think about how unpredictable you and I are, right? And that can never be.
Yeah, we all have unpredictable behaviors. We all have things we do every day that are different. And over time, your personality will change.
Right.
Your habits will change.
People change. It's right.
So what Aaron Morgan, B5K, said, from what you're wearing here, you wanted to be treated like a guy from bum fights.
Mm.
Yeah, I found this image with some freeze frames from bum fights. It was a movie series from 2000 to 2006.
Quadrilogy, maybe?
Yeah. And what they did, they would basically, they paid these bums to do stunts and fight each other. It was exploitation.
Yeah,
I mean, it
that's
was
a little unethical. A lot of
terrible.
it unethical.
Yeah. It eventually all collapsed in people.
They created a class.
They
So
did.
one lawyer could represent
Well,
so many people.
so you had the two guys who made the first video and then they sold it. A couple other people bought it. They made the last three videos. There wound up being a criminal lawsuit. They wound up losing a criminal lawsuit.
Yeah.
And yeah, they had to serve sentences for what they did. One of the guys who starred in it, Rufus Hanna, one of the homeless guys, he went on to become a property manager, an author, and an activist with the National Coalition for the Homeless. Unfortunately, he died in a car accident in 2017. Not entirely negative outcomes. Dr. Phil had the producers on his show. He was basically like, look, you're exploiting these people. And what they said to him was,
We're paying them.
basically said, isn't that what you're doing on your show? Aren't you basically exploiting people who are in a bad way by bringing them on your show and to embarrass them in front of everybody?
I don't watch Dr. Phil.
I don't even know if his show,
It's still going.
the guy's got to be pushing 80, you know? Anyway,
I'm looking it up right now.
look it up.
Concluded after 21 seasons, May 25th, 2023. You good?
May 25th, 2023. And he was what, 75? 76? When his series ended?
Phil McGraw, born 1950.
Okay. So he was like 49, 50 years old when he got his show.
73 at time of conclusion.
Okay. So,
72.
okay,
yeah.
so he was 52 when he got his own show.
Hmm.
You know?
Historical run.
Isn't that kind of what you would hope for? Is like you catch that sale at 52 years old and you write.
Yeah, I mean, because the thing is, you come after Dr. Phil ethically. What kind of accountability are you going to hold a freaking 75-year-old at this point?
Well, yeah. The other thing is people going on his show, they were adults or minors whose parents had signed for them. They're agreeing to it. They're getting paid.
How is that different than bum fights?
Well, you could say the difference is that these homeless people were desperate.
That's true, too.
Yeah, and it was, when you're hungry, it's a survival decision.
You bounce your head on the concrete, there's a chance you're going to die.
Dr. Phil wasn't putting people's lives in danger. It's obvious that, you know what, I don't think he had a license. You know, I don't think he was, I think he made it clear that he was not practicing, he was not engaging in clinical practice on his show. But to be honest, it's kind of like with Anthony Robbins too, with Tony Robbins, how, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of people who benefit from going to his events, but there are also videos of him verbally abusing people. Like in people who are attending his rally, they're attending it and he's verbally abusing them.
Gotcha. So Phil McGraw does have his doctorate in clinical psychology.
I don't think he has a license to practice.
Yeah, I don't think. Because what board would approve that?
Well, obviously what he was doing was not clinical treatment, you know? It was entertainment. Anyway, what a remarkable run for him. There's a lot to criticize him for, but what a run. Go to the next comment.
Comments on reefs dying, bleached corals impact on beaches and erosions. Sorry, folks, this is alarmist BS. Okay? I hope you don't live in Florida, Gary Rush.
You have these studies, you have these images of bleached coral, and you have these studies with hundreds of people taking part.
Right,
And I'm supposed to believe that what they're saying isn't true.
right. I think Gary here is saying it doesn't matter anyway. I don't think he's denying the facts. I think he's saying it's not a big deal anyway.
Well, he could be. Yeah, that's true. With a YouTube comment, I think Gary should make his own video. He could make a video about how coral reefs are actually flourishing. And if you go to the next slide, there is an image of coral reefs flourishing on the moon.
In that study, they looked at over 52,000 individual colonies across 131 distinct sites
Uh-huh.
with near 100% mortality.
No way.
Right.
50,000.
52,000
colonies.
colonies that are effectively distinct, gone. Right.
Yeah, it's an apocalypse. On that note, are you ready to go to the next? Since we were talking about aging, I want to talk about a couple of studies that were looking at basically anti-aging kind of stuff. The first one looks at NAD+. And NAD+ it's a hydrogen carrier.
Okay.
And it's a hydrogen carrier within the mitochondria. It's vital to the Krebs cycle.
That hydrogen pops on and off pretty easily.
Relatively.
Okay.
It can let it go.
Is it the first thing that goes?
So if you look on the lower right,
Yeah.
you can see where
That's what I'm
hydrogen is
referencing.
at. Right. So you basically give up a double bond and convert it to a hydrogen bond. If you've got these two hydrogens, if you've got one hydrogen, it's just pointing off like this, right? If you've got two hydrogens, they each have their own electron cloud, and so they're going to be pushing away from each other.
I understand you're the chemical engineer.
Uh-huh.
So I'm going to format this as a question, not as a correction. When you say hydrogen bond, I thought hydrogen bond was like,
Oh, you're right. It's not really a hydrogen bond.
okay.
You're right. It is a covalent bond. But you have two hydrogens. Like when you have one hydrogen, it just sticks up there.
Mm-hmm.
When you have two hydrogens, they each have an electron on them, and they're pushing on each other. So either one of those is ready to pop off at any moment.
Okay.
It's like you have this giant molecule, and its biological function is to just carry this tiny atom, right? Just to pick up this tiny atom and carry
Yeah,
it.
proton, essentially.
Right, yeah. So you got a couple, NAD is, your body produces NAD from vitamin B2.
Okay.
And the two forms of vitamin B2 that the researchers in this study I'm about to talk about looked at are nicotinamide riboside and nicotinamide mononucleotide.
Okay.
And those are the molecules on the upper right.
Okay.
And if you want to go to the next slide, what they wanted to look at is what is the effect of NAD of B2 supplementation, basically nicotinamide riboside and NMN, nicotinamide mononucleotide, NR and NM. What is the effect of supplementation on Alzheimer's? Specifically, they looked at the tauopathy within Alzheimer's. Tauopathy is common in every form of dementia. Tau proteins are like shoelaces, and they run along the microtubules in neurons. Neuron microtubules, they show up in the dendrites and the axons, right?
Okay.
You can think of like any structure, any cellular structure in your body is like a stack of molecules. It's a stack of fats and proteins. They're built like bricks. Tau proteins run like strings through them and help hold them together. They help hold these dendrites and axons together. And in Alzheimer's disease, in dementia, one aspect of it is that these tau proteins have two conformations, water-soluble and fat-soluble one, right? And ideally, they should sit in this water-soluble conformation. That's what allows them to transport throughout your brain and throughout the cell. Every molecule is constantly vibrating. So they move into this other conformation naturally, but then they'll shift back as long as they're surrounded by water.
Okay.
But you can get them sticking together. If you get two of them that kind of shift into this conformation where the fat-soluble amino acids are on the outside, then they can stabilize each other and stick together.
After that point, they can't go back to the water soluble.
They're stable in this useless form. And they're not water-soluble anymore, so they can't easily transport around. As they run up against other tau molecules, tau proteins, they will also cause them to stick. So you wind up with these bundles of pathogenic tau, right? And your brain has to break those apart.
Is that A beta plaques?
Those are amyloid beta.
Okay.
If you look at the lower left,
Impaired glutamate recycling?
on the lower left where it
Lower
says neurofibril tangles, those are tangles of tau protein.
Okay.
And you can see that microtubule is just coming apart. Without the tau in them, without tau to hold them together, those axons and dendrites,
Kind of blow apart.
yes. So in dementia, part of the reason you lose so many neurons is because this structural protein becomes sick. Ideally, your brain will clear these out. Your glia, the glia in your brain will clear these out. But part of what's going on with dementia is that your brain's no longer clearing that out.
And it's probably happening too fast at a certain point.
Right. If the circulation in your brain has been harmed by years or decades of smoking, then you're going to have less ability to clear those tau proteins. In Alzheimer's disease, you also have pathological amyloid beta. And amyloid beta occurs within the synapses.
All right. That's
So-
what I was looking at.
Right. You have the same thing going on where you have the two possible conformations and they start sticking together in the sick conformation. That's something that naturally occurs throughout the day. Like
Okay.
when you go to sleep and your neurons calm down and the synapses aren't firing as much, that's when that gets cleared out.
Mhm.
Sleep is essential. As these toxic molecules
Okay.
accumulate in your brain,
I hadn't thought about that. That partly explains why your brain has to stop at that level.
mhm,
I've always wondered since I was a little kid, why do you need sleep?
right.
And plus, why do you need so much sleep?
We spend a lot of our lives in sleep in the dreamlands. That's why I'm like, make it as comfortable as you can. Make it as enjoyable to sleep as you can. You gotta
Right.
spend a lot of time sleeping.
Yeah, getting into that deep sleep is necessary.
Yeah. So these tangles actually start getting cleared out basically as soon as you go out. They're happening in normal non-REM sleep. You don't even need to get to slow wave sleep. That's why even just a short nap regenerates you.
Okay.
What they wanted to look at is how does supplementation.
Do you need me to switch slides?
So here's what they proposed. Maybe part of what's causing you to have so many pathological tau proteins in your brain is that they're not getting transcribed correctly to begin with, right? So these are examples of splicing errors, right? So you've got an alternative splice on the 5' site. And they did a good job of showing how these different transcription errors would show up in a protein.
Yeah, and how they compare to the normal outcome.
Right. So what these researchers were thinking is maybe there's transcription errors that are adding to the problem. You have tau proteins that are already being poorly made, right? Now, with NAD, with giving people the B2 supplementation, so hopefully they would produce more NAD. And I should say, they didn't give it to people. They gave it to mice, cells in the petri dish and worms. What they believed is that you have mitochondria that are not functioning properly. A lot of the problem is coming from calcium channels within mitochondria. And they set off to follow the molecular pathways to see where they led. And it's a really interesting study. If you want to go to the next one, NAD plus reverses Alzheimer's neurological deficits via regulating differential alternative RNA splicing of EVA1C.
Okay. I don't know if I'm on the right slide.
There it is.
Okay. We skipped a slide.
No, we touched on all of them.
Okay.
doing
Then I
good.
missed it.
We're doing good. So I want to say real quick, I'm going to talk about a couple different supplements here. Nothing I'm going to say is medical advice or nutritional advice. And I'm not telling nobody that they should go take a supplement.
Right.
Before you do that, talk to your doctor, talk to your healthcare provider, talk to your nutritionist, your dietitian. This is not medical advice.
Do your due diligence.
Yes. not medical advice. Okay.
All right.
So what they did, they had some mice that were the wild type mice, right? And then they had mice that had a mutation in the gene for producing tau protein.
They essentially induced Alzheimer's into these.
Yeah, tauopathy. If you look at survival rates in graph G there, you can see the wild type. This is worms they were looking at here. You had the survival rate of these worms, the wild type worms, they outlived nearly all of the mutant worms.
And the ones that were not sick.
And you can see the longest lifespan on them was like 25 days. If you take the ones that had the mutations but didn't receive treatment, they had the shortest lifespans, and their lifespans were about 7-8 days shorter than just the wild regular worms.
Is that the kind of sickish green?
Yeah. So you have the green and the red, and they didn't really receive any treatment. Well, if you look at the blue, they basically received nicotinamide riboside.
Okay.
And you can see in the blue that they actually had very good survival. Some of them almost made it as long as the wild type worms. If you look at C, you can see the worms, the cells, and the mice. The mutant worms that were just given water had tau tangles. Those that received the nicotinamide riboside had half the amount.
Okay.
And then it's the same with the mice. Now with the cells, they gave them NMN. They gave them nicotine mononucleotide. And you can see the different concentrations they gave. 0.5 micromolar, 1 micromolar, 2 micromolar, right?
Right. And then they also had one that was just resting in the control group.
Right. And you can see the control group has all these tau proteins.
Okay.
While all those treatment groups had much less. And as far as I can tell, increasing the amount really didn't seem to make that big a difference.
The difference between the 1 molar and the 2 molar is micromolar. No.
Yeah, so the 2 micromolar, the 2 millimolar is huge. It is a bigger difference. But the difference just in receiving any of it at all outstrips that.
And when you say tau proteins, what you really mean is these NFTs, neurofibril tangles.
The tau tangles.
Right.
Yeah. The pathogenic tau proteins, pathological tau proteins. Now, if you go to the next slide, they also gave mice the NMN. These are mutant mice. They gave them NMN, and they did what's called the NOR test, the new object recognition test. So what you do is on day 1, you put them in a room with 2 objects that are identical. You let them inspect them, and they'll spend a lot of time inspecting them. The next day, you take out one of those objects and put in an object that's different. So now you have 2 objects. One is the same, the other is different. When you introduce the mice back in, they should spend more time around the new object. If they don't, that means they don't remember it. If they spend equal amounts of time around the objects when they go back in, that means they didn't remember from the day before.
Right.
And what they found was that you had a tremendous improvement in the group that was treated versus the group that was not. Giving them that nicotinamide riboside, if you look at the red, you can see that's the mutant group that's untreated. In the black, you have the control group. And then in the blue, you have the mutant group that's treated.
The standard mutant group treated with NMN.
Right. And they basically did just as well as the regular wild type mice. Now, what they did was they were trying to figure out what is the specific pathway being followed. And so you can see EVA1C.
Yeah.
If you can see EVA1C-KO and EVA1C-OV, right? So that EVA1C KO, that's knocked out. That's where that gene was disabled.
Okay.
That's mice where they didn't have the gene to produce EVA1C, right? And you can see that group, they performed terribly.
They were receiving the supplement for creating something, and the thing that is being created off of this supplement cannot be created.
Right. So what they're saying is supplementation is assisting the mitochondria, assisting the mitochondria with being more productive. And then that's basically allowing EVA1C to be fully transcribed,
Okay.
fixing transcription problems happening within EVA1C.
Okay.
And then they don't believe that is the one single thing that's doing it. They believe there's more going on downstream. And that's largely because their machine learning and AI models predict that. But the evidence for EVA1C being the pathway here is just incredibly powerful.
Okay.
When you look, now, a couple other tests they did. They tracked the body weight of the mouse participants and gave them the open field test, which is just allowing them to randomly walk around, see how far they walk. And those are ways to look for side effects. And as you can see in the open field test, giving them supplementation didn't harm them. And as far as body weight goes, the supplements didn't cause anybody to lose weight. So based on this mouse study, it appears that NAD supplementation may be helpful with Alzheimer's disease in humans. It was clearly helpful with mice and worms. There are human trials going on right now. There are phase 1 trials.
Okay.
And the thing is, nicotinamide riboside is a dirt cheap supplement.
Right. Now it's time to invest in vitamin B2 retailers.
Right. You can buy it in bulk.
We're going to see the price skyrocket.
You think skyrocket? It's not that hard to manufacture.
Neither is insulin.
Okay. If you go to the next slide, there's this idea called inflammaging.
Mm-hmm.
And in this, what they're showing is that visceral obesity is actually one of the biggest contributors. Visceral obesity is the fat that's between the organs of your abdomen. I read a study a little over a year ago where they looked at visceral fat versus subcutaneous fat in your abdomen.
Okay.
And what they found is it didn't make any difference.
So both forms of abdominal fat.
Just abdominal fat in general contributes to inflammation. So when people say, oh, we're going to target the visceral fat, that actually may not matter at all.
Okay. But wouldn't it be kind of hard to target only one type of fat? Wouldn't you just have to target
See how
the
you
whole
can,
shebang?
Right. But you can see basically that visceral obesity is leading to all this production of inflammatory cytokines.
Okay.
And you can see it also leads to mitochondrial dysfunction, which is basically, if you look at that last study, that's kind of what they were proposing, was that you have mitochondrial dysfunction that can be aided with NR or NMN supplementation. But all of this inflammation then leads to damage to your blood vessels. It basically leads to cardiovascular damage.
Okay.
And that is the strongest aging component. That's what creates the permanent damage. If you look on the next slide, it shows where inflammaging leads to cardiovascular disease, diabetes, osteoporosis, and dementia. All these feed on each other where you get cognitive disability and physical disability, and you get a vicious cycle.
And they end in time morbidity and premature mortality.
Right.
You are more likely to die from other things, and you are going to die earlier.
Right. So what these researchers were trying to do, were they looking at, can we get immune cells which may be experiencing mitochondrial dysfunction?
Okay.
Can we get them to wake up to renew themselves
Okay.
and act like they are young again. When you're young, your immune system is more flexible, right? And as you age, it becomes more crystallized. Instead of being adaptive, it kind of becomes just more, what does it already know to look for?
Right.
And that becomes problematic because cancer cells, your immune system doesn't know how to look for them necessarily, right? Or if there's new diseases like COVID, your immune system may not be able to detect it. And by the time it does detect it, it's overwhelmed and then produces a cytokine storm, which causes your lungs to fill up with fluid, inflammation, right?
Right. And I think you and I discussed back when you were doing the sexy universe that the thymus stops learning after a certain point.
Okay, so in the TrimX study, what they found was the thymus fills with fat. Basically, thymic cells die, they get replaced with fat cells. And your thymus is where your immune cells are trained. When new immune cells are produced in your bone marrow, they go to the thymus, and in the thymus, they are trained.
Right, but those memory cells, when do you stop? When does basically production of new memory cells stop?
What do you mean?
Your thymus has memory cells, correct?
Sure.
They know what to look for. That
Right.
in your thymus that train these new cells.
I don't know an answer to that.
I thought
but,
we talked
but
about.
when your thymus fills up with fat, the function is gone.
Gotcha.
In the TrimX study, what they did was they gave participants a stack of HGH, metformin, and DHEA. The reason for the metformin was to counteract the
What metformin is?
it's a diabetes treatment. HGH tends to push up your blood sugar. So the metformin was to counteract the blood sugar effects of the HGH. In that study, they were able to get the participants' thymus renewed over a period of 12 months.
Right. They basically did, what was it, like 30 years of anti-aging?
More like 5.
5?
So
I was way off.
what they did, they looked at, this is just over the course of a year, right? And the study was actually kind of thrown off by COVID.
The study to be a part of right before COVID.
Right. What they did was they looked at epigenetic aging, which epigenetic aging is how much of your DNA is unwound versus how much should be. If you take the epigenetic age of a newborn, if you were to take that cord blood, you'd find many, many fewer genes are unwound and in use. Over the course of life, ideally, you unwind a gene, use it, and then your cell should put it back, but it doesn't always happen, right? When you get more of them unwound, you can call that epigenetic aging. One thing you're trying to accomplish when you talk about anti-aging is getting those to be put back on the shelf so there's less clutter in the library. They found by giving people this stack, not only did their thymuses improve, their immune system improved, their markers of inflammation improved, and their epigenetic age went backward. They checked them 6 months after, and it was kind of COVID disruption that kind of made them stop doing it, and so they checked on them again, but they hadn't been able to continue this treatment. A lot of it was retained. Like their inflammation markers stayed down. Their epigenetic age, it's not like they suddenly aged very quickly. They just continued back.
They returned to normal aging patterns.
Right. So it'd be interesting to see, do they actually gain years of healthy life? You know, because the participants were basically healthy people.
A lot of these studies, they require
Right.
a standard prereq.
An interesting thing too, I believe it's CD38 positive macrophages. CD38 actually breaks down nicotinamide riboside and nicotinamide mononucleotide. As you age, the number of CD38 macrophages in your blood actually increases. So you may be able to explain the drop in available B2 that happens with age just from that. But the number of CD38 positive macrophages in their blood actually declined and stayed low. So it could be that a lot of the benefit they were getting was actually coming from having more available NAD in their mitochondria.
Okay.
In this study, though, they looked at CD8 macrophages. And CD8 positive macrophages, what they do is they recognize what your cells do is when they're producing proteins, they take some of the proteins they produce and they put them on the cell membrane. They hold them out there. So then your immune system, these macrophages, can come along, recognize them. And if it's a protein they shouldn't be producing, whether it's a viral protein, the cell's infected with a virus, it's producing viral proteins. This immune cell can recognize that and say, you're producing shit you ain't supposed to, and it hits the suicide button, presses the button, orders that cell, drink the Hemlock.
Mm-hmm.
Just like Socrates, you gots to die.
Mm-hmm.
But induces apoptosis, right?
Okay.
And it does that with cancer cells too. So if you go to the next slide, what they were trying to do was, in this study, they wanted to try to induce mitophagy, which the idea is you have all these reactive oxygen species that are produced in the mitochondria.
Well, if the image resolution on this is...
I'm pretty enough to make up for that.
Okay.
Great hair, dude.
Yeah, you and Gaddafi.
So the mitochondria are aging or becoming damaged. What should happen is the old mitochondria get killed, and the particular protein that induces that comes off of the endoplasmic reticulum is PGC1 alpha.
Yeah.
That PCG1 alpha causes the damaged mitochondria to die, apoptose, to be consumed by the rest of the cell. And then healthy mitochondria should then split and basically carry out their own mitosis.
Isn't it basically that mitochondria, a cell within a cell?
Yes.
And on a historical evolutionary level?
At some point, one bacteria consumed another.
But it didn't consume it.
Eat it, didn't digest it.
It let it exist within itself.
Same thing with chlorophyll.
Wow.
Yes.
Interesting.
I feel like we got the short end of the stick,
Well, I mean, but the thing is, one can't really exist without the other, right?
But I would rather have both.
Sure. Well, yeah, the tree has both.
Yeah, there's a book called Ocean Road, and it's about a guy who eventually meets his future self. He lives on Mars in a cabin that he'd gotten drunk, and he had said he had a little road in front of his cabin. He was thinking how destination and destiny are the same word. He says he's drunk and he slurs it and he says, "You are Desolation Road." But he had meant to say Destination Road. So anyway, it gets called Desolation Road. And it's actually a generational story. At the end of the story, he meets himself for the second time. And he's green. And he has chlorophyll. He had become a green man on Mars, little green man. And he said, "Yeah, but you still got to eat." And he's like, no, I'm entirely powered by photosynthesis. Then he moons him and says, "See, no asshole." Anyway, I wish I had chlorophyll.
Okay.
If you go to the next slide.
I wonder how you went through that.
Oh, you know what? It describes it in the book. But unfortunately, the book is fiction, so you can't replicate it.
Was it, in the book, was it natural or surgical?
No, he got pulled up into a spaceship. It was done scientifically on a spaceship.
Okay. I'll be more specific with my question then. Did they sew his butthole closed, or did he naturally?
I don't recall.
That's a real procedure that happens.
Oh, yeah, when they retire your butthole and give you a
Barbie butt?
colostomy. Right. Effect of the mitophagy inducer Urolithin A on age-related immune decline. A randomized placebo-controlled trial. The study it was based on came from, it's registered on clinicaltrials.gov. And that molecule at the bottom, that's Urolithin A. And so they basically had 79 people who volunteered, who were assessed. 50 were taken on. It was people between 45 and 70. 60% women, 40% men.
Okay.
Half of them went in the placebo group. Half of them went in the treatment group. The treatment group received an entire gram per day for 28 days. It's been shown that that is a safe dosage for most people. Again, talk to your licensed healthcare provider.
Okay.
I'm not giving advice. But yeah, Urolithin A was found to induce metabolic reprogramming of these immune cells. In square A, if you go to the next slide, square A is showing the glucose dependence.
Fig square A.
Yeah. Mitochondria don't just burn glucose, they break down everything. But as they become sicker, they become more incapable of doing anything but glucose,
Okay.
right? So the glucose dependence is, when it declines, it's showing that they're able to metabolize more things. These immune cells are, and I should say, it's not just the immune cells, it's the whole person. Their metabolism is becoming less dependent on glucose. So they don't have to have as much blood sugar, right?
And then for these figures, is it men versus women, or is
It's
it control group?
Control group versus placebo.
You mean control group treatment?
Treatment group versus placebo. Group is in green and placebo is in red. When you look at the glucose dependence, you can see it went way down. It went down by about 40%, almost 50%.
And outliers reduced.
Right. It went down almost 40% in the treatment group. But in the placebo group, it's basically no change. The FAO and AAO capacity, that's fatty acid oxidation and amino acid oxidation, improved in the treatment group. But there was no change in the control group. Then they looked specifically at different immune cells. For example, they looked at the FAO and AAO capacity of non-classical monocytes in box G, and you can see that it improved in the treatment group. They looked at these specific classes of immune cells, and you could see that within these specific classes, in the treatment group it improved, while in the control group it really didn't. And that's just after 28 days of basically taking this very simple supplement. Now, I do want to note that the best way to induce mitophagy is with exercise.
Okay.
30 minutes of cardiovascular exercise. If you're healthy enough for it, please consult your physician before you just go and exercise. I'm not advising you to do any of that. Exercise induces mitophagy.
Be that careful about telling people to take a walk if they're
Right.
capable of it.
Yeah, take a walk if you're capable. Do the exercise you're capable of doing safely, because it does help with inducing mitophagy and keeping your cells young. If you look at the CD8 positive cells in square F, what they were looking at was how active PGC1 alpha was in those sets of cells, in those CD8 cells. You can see this huge shift in the CD8
Right.
positive cells in the treatment group. But in the control group, there's not really any difference.
Got a little bit worse.
And you also see in box A that there's an increase in the number of natural killer cells, the natural born killer cells within the participant's blood. But it didn't really affect the levels of the other monocytes or the B cells or things like that. And anyway, square G basically is showing the same thing. How in the control group, PGC1 alpha increased. Or I'm sorry, in the treatment group, PGC1 alpha increased over 28 days, while in the control group, it actually kind of went down a little. And so let's go to figure 5. In the TRIM-X study that I mentioned, they looked at inflammatory markers.
Okay.
And in box A here, what you have is those same plasma cytokines, but they're inflammatory markers. You can see that they virtually all came down, except that last one, that MCP1. I had to look up what that does. It's a recruitment protein. So it basically encourages those CD8 cells to be more active. Whether or not that's a positive or a negative, I don't know.
Okay.
But
It is a cytokine.
Yes. But you can see all these other inflammatory markers, the interleukin 6, interleukin 4, interleukin 1 beta, they all fell.
Right. And actually, you have less variance within the control group.
Or not within the control group, within the treatment group.
Right.
Yeah.
Woof.
Less variance in the treatment group, more variance in the control group. TNF alpha that's mentioned at the bottom of box C, that's also an activation messenger. So giving that activation messenger to that treatment group actually caused the cells, those immune cells, to become more active. If you look at box F, you can see that they took a bunch of these monocytes and they threw them into a petri dish, and then they exposed them to E. coli.
Okay.
They were, in the treatment group, they were more active against the E. coli. They reacted more quickly and started attacking it. They were quicker after treatment. But in the control group, there wasn't any improvement. In fact, it looks like it may have slightly declined. I don't think it's enough to be significant.
No.
So you have two studies here that focused on mitochondria. And so the idea that aging begins in the immune system, because as the immune system becomes senescent and loses its ability to recognize new threats, or even for those cells to
Recognize threats it already.
then the rest of your body also fills up with senescent cells,
Okay.
right? So is it possible then that senescence is actually beginning in the mitochondria?
Yeah. I mean, right. Because isn't your mitochondrial DNA the same across all cells?
I believe so. I mean, all your DNA is the same across all cells.
Sure.
Right.
All right. The expression,
I don't know.
mitochondrial systemic failure.
One other thing I think is really cool is you're talking about treating aging with supplements that are basically free and have been shown to be pretty safe.
Yeah, and the other thing is, it's not really ever like taking those supplements on a personal level. Don't think it's ever too early, you know?
Well, that's fair. I think ideally, if you stay active in exercise, you won't need that amount of supplementation until your 50s or 60s. But
Save your money.
here's a better question. Would you need to do it all the time? Would it be better to do your 28 days twice a year? Would you get a better effect doing that versus taking it every day?
Right. This isn't a chronological study.
Right. The other thing is they didn't look at epigenetics, like the epigenetic aging, and I wish they would have done that to see if there was any effect there.
Okay.
Your turn.
For the first study I read, it was a meta-analysis called Ionizing Radiation, How Fungi Cope, Adapt, and Exploit with the Help of Melanin, written by Terina Dakachova and Arturo Casadeval.
Okay.
Arturo Casadeval.
Definitely sound European.
Okay.
Ekaterina? Slavic for sure.
Okay.
I don't know if she's Ukrainian or Belarusian or Russian.
Shout out to them, though.
Moldovan.
So this here is Claudospermium.
Okay.
Claudosporium. All right. So for my topic, the first paper that I read was a meta-analysis.
Okay.
It's called Ionizing Radiation, How Fungi Cope, Adapt, and Exploit with the Help of Melanin, written by Ekaterina
Dadachova.
and Arturo Casadeval.
Okay.
And this here is Claudosporium. It's Spirospermum.
Spirospermum.
This is when you talk about black mold, you're actually talking about a specific species, like in the research world. When you talk about a black mold, you're talking about a melanized mold,
Okay.
right? And Spiro is what you're going with?
Spirospermum.
Yeah. C. Spirospermum is a melanized fungi.
Okay.
And it is one of the dominating fungi here in Chernobyl reactor number 4, which is the one that went up.
Okay.
And this picture is actually a still off of a video that Alexander Kupny took. Alexander Kupny is a guy who worked at nuclear reactor facilities,
Mm-hmm.
and he took radiological measurements around the facility.
Mm-hmm.
Once he retired, he kind of said
He worked at the facility after it had gone up.
he didn't work at Chernobyl. He worked at normal.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
It's considered blue collar in the nuclear field,
Sure.
but you know, I mean,
He was a technician. Yeah, that's great.
and basically he retired, and about 60 years old, he decided to go take a video documentation of Chernobyl.
Oh, okay.
From what I read, he figured that he wasn't likely to be old enough to experience cancer from it, and he suited up well enough that he didn't get the acute radiological
sure.
sickness. And also in these videos, you can actually see like the radiation mess with the camera.
Really?
Yeah. It's cool.
Radiation destroys electronics pretty quickly.
And the difference between being free from the elephant's foot versus touching it is astronomically different.
Really? Okay.
Well, it's like sound, you know, how quickly it dissipates,
Okay.
how quickly the concentration dissipates.
Right.
Yeah.
And with radiation, it's also getting absorbed.
Right. In this meta-analysis, what they did was they looked at a bunch of species of fungi that grow on the reactor walls.
Okay.
And what they were trying to determine is whether or not these fungi express radiotropism. Radiotropism is where something survives off of utilizing radiation energy, not just survives being next to it, but actually,
Okay.
in a way,
Okay.
almost like photosynthesis.
Okay.
And what they found is that in these melanized fungi, right, is the melanin in your skin in these fungi, when they're protecting you from ionizing radiation, which is anything UV and above,
Uh-huh.
photoradiation UV and above. What it does is it actually forms like spheres,
Okay.
almost like vacuoles in your skin. When the radiation hits it, it excites the electron like sphere clouds,
Okay.
and it actually elevates I forget what it's called, but the electron
level.
throughout the entire complex.
Okay.
And when you crush it, it actually becomes less effective.
Yeah.
Some of its parts is actually less than the whole.
What you're saying is that one excited electron is spread throughout the whole molecule. So
Not just the whole molecule, the whole complex. It's
Gotcha.
multiple melanin.
So that keeps the electrons from being ionized because that energy is dissipated through the whole complex.
Right.
Okay.
And what they found with these melanated fungi is it actually increased the melanin's ability to create NADH fourfold.
No way.
Right.
So does melanin in your skin naturally produce NADH?
I didn't look that up.
But basically, what this mold was doing is they were using the melanin to capture the ionizing radiation and use those electrons to secure hydrogen onto NAD.
Yes.
No.
Dude, that's cool. Yeah, basically, in your skin, what it exists to do is to prevent you from being damaged by radiation, ionizing radiation,
Sure.
like sunburns and cancer, right? Or DNA damage.
Yeah.
In fungi, within this block of research that the researchers did on this meta-analysis, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are some sources that say the fungi perhaps were not using melanin at all to protect itself, but basically everything else refutes that.
Okay,
That
sure.
it does provide some DNA protection to the fungi.
Okay.
But also the way that the fungi in Chernobyl's reactor protects itself, its own DNA, is it has a higher level of expression in genetic repair,
Oh, okay. More sirtuins.
right? Specifically DNA repair, which would be expressed by genes RAD50, RAD51,
Okay.
and then recombination genes, HRP1, right? And then ubiquitin degradation gene, P1.
So these things are working hard just
Yes.
to keep it together.
Inscription gene, BUR2,
Wow.
and some others, right? And what they'll do is, if a strand of DNA is open, if it has open ends,
Mm-hmm.
it will indiscriminately close them off with a different piece of DNA. So whether it matches or not, it closes those ends off,
Okay.
right? And other cells do that to some degrees, but they were doing it at an accelerated rate within these particular fungi.
That's so cool, man.
And one of the studies they looked at was growing these fungi that existed within Chernobyl, the reactor itself, and the soil surrounding Chernobyl.
Okay.
And basically looking at this graph, do you need this?
I've got it. I can see it.
So within each of these examples, what you're looking at is a control return angle of light of fungi growing in a petri dish normally,
Okay.
right? Ionizing radiation directed at, right? And what they used was, I believe, cadmium 109,
Okay.
a gamma ray
Right. Yeah.
isotope of cadmium.
Okay.
And the lower the return angle, the more the fungi grew towards
Really?
the cadmium. Right.
Some of them were really booking it toward that cadmium.
Right. And utilizing it.
What it makes me think of is Robert Downey Jr. when he was, for the third time, in court for possession of tweak. And when he was basically trying to keep himself from getting 15 years.
So, shout out to him getting off of it.
But he stood there in front of the judge and he said, "It's like I'm holding a gun in my mouth and I love the taste of the metal." That's what this is. Like going toward the radioactive cadmium. The fungus are growing toward it. That's crazy, dude.
Right. So in the middle right figure is the one that dominates the wall of reactor number 4. And you can actually see it's not even the most radiotropic specimen.
That one below it is crazy. The one in the middle is, the one in the middle and the one on the lower right.
I believe the one on the lower right is actually within the same genus, and it's one of the ones in this next study I looked at, cladosporioids,
Okay.
or
And
cladosporioides.
were all these 9 types, were they all scraped off of the,
Not just off the walls, but also in the soils surrounding the red forest.
okay. It looks like there's one that doesn't have a preference for it.
Right.
And actually, it looks like there's at least one other where it may have a preference, but it may not be significant given the number of.
Right.
Interesting.
They scraped off the spirospermum, right, off of the wall, but also they took samples out of the soil outside.
Okay.
So you'll see it twice, but that's why there's different numbers next.
I see.
And basically with this research, a lot of this came out in the late 2000s. A lot of it, you had a huge spark in research in the late 2000s, and then it suddenly died off, right? And in 2022, let's see, Jesse Bland and his team of researchers so Jesse Bland, he kind of works for multiple organizations.
Okay.
One is the Department of Energy.
Okay.
Right. And through his research grants, through the Department of Energy, he wanted to look at whether or not there were actually fungi that were radiotropic. He wanted to answer that question.
Sure.
Like not just resistant or do well, right? Because within this meta-analysis, researchers have found that in a lack of nutrients, the stuff that was scraped off of the Chernobyl walls could actually make up for it by being exposed to this ionizing radiation.
Oh.
Yeah. They kind of made up for the lack of nutrients.
Okay.
Right. Here is a diagram of how they set this up, right? Because what they really wanted to eliminate possible radiation absorption before it reaches the fungi.
Okay.
So if you look in the top left, it's the top view, and that green little circle,
Mm-hmm. I see.
the fungi within,
Mm-hmm.
right, within the petri dish.
Sure.
And they placed the petri dish within a box of lead bricks.
Okay.
And then they placed within the petri dish like a substrate of basically potato sugar,
Sure.
and which the fungi would have plenty of, right? They gave it a very nutrient-rich kind of soil.
Okay.
And then they put cesium-137, which is a
X-ray.
low-energy gamma emitter.
Really?
Right. And then they compared that against UV light, where they got a UV lamp, but also they wanted to expose it to the same level of energy from UV.
Okay.
Right. It was really an intense control.
Uh-huh.
Right.
Right.
Which the kind of sad point for me, or I guess a little bit disappointing to me, is they didn't use specimens Chernobyl.
No?
They used species that exist within Chernobyl, but not straight up specimens from Chernobyl.
I see.
Right. So
Was it just a safety issue of sending somebody in there to get it?
this occurred in the United States,
Sure.
not Ukraine. Right. And
Okay.
this happened in 2022. So 2022, I believe, Russia-Ukraine war started that.
That's true. Yeah, you're right.
Getting to Chernobyl right now might be hazardous.
Not a good idea.
So all the credit to them for still continuing with this.
Okay.
Anyway, so the next slide is that same genus, right, of the Spirosporum,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Okay.
And in that top left corner, or that in the left side, is the time over a few days, like the growth rate over the course of a few days.
Okay.
And in the orange is the control,
Uh-huh.
in the blue is gamma, and in red is UV light.
Okay.
What they found was there wasn't a significant difference between them.
Okay.
And what they also found was that the pigmentation just increased.
Okay. Particularly with exposure to the UV.
Right.
Okay.
They found that the gamma radiation didn't really increase pigmentation nearly as much, which you would expect that it would, but this was observed about 10 years ago,
Okay.
10, 15 years ago.
Okay.
Can you pronounce that?
Be very ODI. Very ODI.
They wanted to look at pigmentation not just with melanization, in reference to melanization. How much pigmentation changed when they're not using melanin? Because if it's using the melanin to produce more NADH,
Mm-hmm.
how does that compare to something that doesn't use melanin?
Okay. Sure.
And so this P. varioti, it doesn't use melanin. It uses WYA1,
Okay.
which is a precursor to melanin.
Okay. Gotcha.
But it doesn't actually use melanin. The unique thing about melanin is that it provides resistance to all forms of electromagnetic radiation.
Okay. Ionizing radiation. Right. Ionizing electromagnetic radiation. Right.
The specific language I saw was for all.
Right. So the melanin should provide protection from both the gamma radiation and
The UV.
the
yeah.
UV.
Right. While this YWA1 is really only effective against UVC, which is the high band,
Okay. Sure.
high end of UV,
Sure. Okay.
which is the most damaging.
Right.
And what they found was that there really wasn't a difference in the pigmentation rate between either of them.
Right. So what they did, they looked at pigmentation
Right.
and growth rate. But you can see that the bars on that growth rate are actually super wide.
Right. The variance. Yes.
Right.
I think I have them mislabeled on this.
And the pigmentation.
So I have these mislabeled on the last slide where I compare the bar graphs directly.
Uh-huh.
The left hand is P. varioti and the right hand is C. cladosporioides.
Okay.
And to me, it looks significant in the P. varioti that it does seem to be increasing growth rate when exposed to gamma radiation. But they said it's not significant, which I think it's because their sample size was so small.
Okay. Gotcha. It's too bad they couldn't get mold from Chernobyl.
Right.
Stupid war.
What do you think of all that?
Dude, I would never have guessed. That using melanin to produce NADH, that's just
Right.
genius. That's such a step.
In regular fungi, it does use NADH, but the melanin does produce NADH. It's just 4 times more active in these these radiotropic specimens off of the Chernobyl walls when exposed to
So a
ionized.
tool that other molds have, these ones just use it much, much better.
You're right. Right.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's making use of what you got.
Yeah, and it's basically, so with fungi, they're like the only eukaryotic cells, right, exist in high elevation points on the north and south poles, where radiation is much higher than it is at sea level here. And then they exist in reactor cooling waters,
Okay.
which is how you keep the radiation out of the air by containing it within water. It naturally grows in reactor cooling water.
Are you serious?
Yeah, now they got to treat the water.
To kill the mold.
Yes. And then it also exists on the ISS.
Really? Oh, because of solar radiation.
I don't know. I don't think no one's done a study on whether or not the mold off the ISS is radiotropic.
But, I mean,
It is resistant.
so when we were talking about life on Mars,
Mm-hmm.
like, Mars don't got atmosphere.
Right.
They use that NADH for respiration. So,
Yeah, breathe, man.
dang it.
And actually, they had to study the stuff from the space station to make sure it wasn't gaining a function that, like, on Earth gave it an unfair advantage.
Right. Stephen Hawking said intelligence is the ability to adapt to change.
Okay.
Are these fungi displaying a type of intelligence?
How fast do they go through a generation? How much of that is intelligence versus
Well, I mean, what is
evolution?
what is a generation of mold?
Right.
It's a colony.
It's all one organism.
They reproduce like both sexually and asexually, but they don't. Like it's all kind of stuck together, isn't it? Like it's
A single organism is a single organism.
okay. Gotcha. Okay. I saw Neil deGrasse Tyson. I listened to his thing on aging, on getting older. And what he said is he wrestled and danced, but he quit so he could go get a PhD and write, right? He said, it's time to get back to work. He danced for a few years and then said, time to go back to work, get a PhD, do some writing. And he was invited on to Dancing with the Stars, and he said no, because he felt like he would be reaching for an inaccessible past. Like that part of his life where he was a dancer, it's over, right?
He has some odd quirks about him. Like I basically saw where he barked at a university student for not having read his book.
Oh, really?
But he was like, kids these days don't read. He was like, I read, I just didn't read your book.
I think he should have never stopped dancing.
Plus the thing is, creative outlets, they help you.
Well, the Maroon 5 guy,
They help you be more intelligent. They help you with the secular as well as.
Okay, so your cerebellum, a lot of motor control in your cerebellum, but actually it's been shown that people who demonstrate high intelligence have a more active cerebellum, even when they're sitting there.
I can feel the heat coming off my head.
That movement, that deliberate movement, increases your ability to think. Right. Especially when you're talking about creative movement, like dancing.
I can't dance. I am a mess on the dance floor. I'll try.
But would just making that effort increase your intelligence? Would it have an impact
Practicing,
on your...
yeah, of course.
You think it would?
Yeah.
Okay.
Plus, you're using your brain.
So, yeah, the more you use it, the better you are at using it.
Right. And basically using it in a variety of ways will help it with the rest. Right. Like a few years ago, I'll compare it to a few years ago when I was trying to get better at pull-ups. I couldn't do more than 2 in a row. And I kept training bodyweight training. And then I went and I lifted for a year or two. And then I was able to do 5.
Okay. But how much of that was your brain?
I did a different kind of training, but it helped me with my bodyweight training. You do a creative outlet, it helps you think creatively, but then I think it'll actually help you think secularly as well.
Okay. I understand what you're saying. So what he said is he thought to himself, you want to keep growing, but you can't keep growing physically. So you got to grow intellectually. And the best way to do that is to learn one new thing every day. Have you ever heard the statement, life is short, and that's the point?
I've heard it.
I actually read it off of a headline. It was in some online magazine. But basically, this person was saying, it's the knowledge that you will die that is actually
The driving force for you to do something with your life.
one thing Neil deGrasse Tyson asserted is that knowledge of death gives life meaning.
Okay.
What do you think of that?
I could disagree.
Okay.
I think even if you knew you were going to live forever, you would find meaning in the day-to-day. I think like living, right? And knowing that you'll die, a lot of people, when they come face to face with it, like a cancer diagnosis or something like that, they start living the life they always meant to, or they always envisioned for themselves, right? Or as close as they can to it. And sure, it was that immediate notion of death, but they were still doing things before they got that diagnosis.
Oh, sure.
They were still making progress in their life. They just weren't making the kind of progress they were before they got the diagnosis. A lot of them talk about being unhappy before and then living their best life. But when you get a diagnosis like that, you're not planning to live till 80.
Yeah, that's true. It brings you into the present.
It brings you into the present, and you don't care about spending your resources, and you don't care about accruing them anymore.
Yeah, that's a good point. The money becomes just a vehicle. You don't even think of it as, I need to collect up money. You think of it as, how can I make use of the money I have?
Right. Which is kind of how you need to think of it, I think, throughout your whole life. Right?
Okay.
I'm not saying sell off your 401k, take that 50% and just do whatever you can with it. I'm saying recognize now, like, if you were going to die tomorrow, what would you do today?
Okay.
And you got to pick a middle term there, because today you might go skydiving if you could manage it, right?
You have a point, because then you'd say, if I knew today was my last day on earth, how would I spend that time?
Right.
Would I spend it arguing with strangers?
Right.
Who would I want to spend it with?
Right.
And what would I do? Is it as useful to think of it, though, as my last day, if today was my last day? Or is it better to think of it as, if this week was my last week?
Which, memento mori, what is it? Latin for remember, you have to die.
Okay, got it.
Remember death?
Sure.
Remember, you have to die, right?
It's one of the few things you have to do. You basically have to eat, sleep, shit, and die.
Yeah. I think people can find meaning in their life by knowing they have to die, right? There are also things that you just do naturally. You have natural drives for certain things,
Mm-hmm.
even not knowing you're going to die.
Okay. So you're saying life would still have a natural meaning.
Yeah, because
You
the
would
thing
still have
is,
a natural drive.
if I thought I was going to die in a year, I wouldn't be thinking about becoming a lawyer in 7.
So you still have to balance the idea that you may live a very long time,
Mm-hmm.
but I could also die today.
Right.
We're living in this tension where we have to think about our future, but we also have to make our present
Worthwhile.
right. It's within that tension that we create meaning within our lives.
Yeah, so you just cut off the most destructive parts of both.
Okay.
If you're going to live forever, who cares how long you spend scrolling Instagram, right?
Right.
But if you know you're going to die today, how much of that would you spend looking at?
1 second,
Right?
you wouldn't even open the app.
If you knew you had to live forever, would you send your boss that email? Would you shit on their desk?
Right, maybe.
You knew you were going to live forever.
My boss isn't that bad.
Oh, you get what I mean,
Right,
boss.
sure, yeah.
Would you shit on their desk today? No. Even if you were going to die tomorrow.
Well, as far as learning one new thing every day, today you taught me a new thing.
So cool. You taught me a few new things. Quite a few new things.
And on that note, I believe the ideal life is a nonstop process of learning and growing. Thanks for learning and growing with us. Stay on your game, and we'll see you next time on Everybuddies podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Good job.